Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations, and through these discussions, you will learn why the majority of the time, the book wins. Having said that, I am a huge movie buff, and do give unbiased reviews for both the book and the movie, ultimately. So whether you love books, movies, or both, this is the perfect podcast for you. This probably goes without saying, but there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie in this episode. So if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie, go do that first and then come back and listen to this. And now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi, thanks for listening to today's episode. We are kicking off Halloween month with I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan, published in 1973. And then the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer was directed by Jim Gillespie, released in 1997. So this month I will be covering 4 books, which aren't like horror stories, but they will be, Halloween-esque, like mysteries or thrillers or something of that sort. And each one will be written by a woman. So there's a lot of like murder mysteries and thrillers and scary books written by women. Like, it's kind of surprising, but so it's been kind of fun to have an all-female author month. Anyway, so this one, I Know What You Did Last Summer has become kind of like, this classic 90s slasher movie. And the book is by Lois Duncan, as I said. And when I was in junior high and high school, I loved her books and I read every one that the library had. She is a great writer for young adult thrillers. And as you will soon learn, the book is not a slasher story at all and is quite different from the movie. Also, I had already read this book. I read this one actually like probably 6 weeks ago, so I'm doing this way in advance. But after already having read it and done this, having written up the blog post, I saw that they are making a TV show for this, I Know What You Did Last Summer. And so the final episode, the finale, will be released on October 25th. So sometime after that, I think I will release a YouTube video just giving my thoughts on the TV show in relation to this book and the original movie. So it won't be on a podcast, I don't think. I think I'll just save it for YouTube. So if you're interested in my thoughts on the new TV show, then, you can follow me on Instagram and follow my YouTube account and stay up to date with what I'm releasing. But for this synopsis, everybody knows the premise of this, with 4 teenagers hitting someone while driving and they leave them to die, and the teenagers make a pact to never talk about it again, and then 1 year later they get a message saying, I know what you did last summer, and this ensues a mystery as to, finding out who sent this note and who knows about the murder. So my thoughts on the book, as I said, when I was in my early teens, I loved Lois Duncan books. Now that like 15 years have passed, I can't say rereading this one makes me want to reread any of her others. It's well written and it has a fun twist, but I think it's just a better fit for a younger audience ultimately. Having said that, I did enjoy it, and it's become just like so iconic. So clearly, like she had something here with this story. And the version I read is an updated version that was released in 2010. And so she made it more applicable to today's readers by adding in cell phones and email, texting, and she swapped out the Vietnam War for Iraq instead. And I was not a fan of this. I enjoy reading books from different time periods because it gives you a feel for what things were like back then. And even though this isn't like a period piece, obviously, 1973 wasn't that long ago, but nonetheless, I still enjoy putting myself in the shoes of those people in a different time period. And by updating it, this part is totally lost. So on to the movie. I, of course, had watched this movie before, and I remembered it fairly well, despite it having been so long ago. And there is a sequel, which is not based on a book, but even though I enjoyed this movie well back in the day, I have never actually watched the sequel, and I probably won't, to be honest. Kevin Williamson wrote the script for this, but nobody wanted to make the movie because they felt that slasher movies were no longer popular. However, he then wrote Scream, which he was able to get made into a movie, and that was a huge success. And due to that, slasher movies were now in again. Especially slasher movies with a comedic element to them, which Scream is for sure comedic. And I Know What You Did Last Summer maybe isn't as funny, but it definitely kind of has that element at times. And the acting, like the actors in this movie, it's just like peak like 90s actors with this cast, because we have Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Ryan Phillippe, and Freddie Prinze Jr. So don't get much more 90s than that. But Jennifer Love Hewitt plays Julie. She has said she isn't a fan of the horror genre, and this and its sequel are the only scary movies she's ever been in. I think she's an alright actress in this. There is a line at the end of the movie between her and Ray. Like, it's some cheesy line, and it's just delivered so terribly. This is a teen slasher movie, though, so it's not like you can expect Oscar-worthy performances. And she also was the youngest cast member, being only 18 in this movie. Then we have Sarah Michelle Gellar, who is Helen, and I thought she was good. Like, I liked her acting better than Jennifer Love Hewitt. And she, of course, went on to star in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I haven't seen, but of course I have heard great things about it. Ryan Phillippe is well cast as the annoying jock Barry. His then girlfriend Reese Witherspoon auditioned for this movie, but then decided to withdraw. However, she recommended her boyfriend Ryan Phillippe for the role of Barry, and he got it. Freddie Prinze Jr. plays the kind yet suspicious Ray, and he and Gellar started dating while working on this movie and are still together to this day. So on to the differences. For one, in the movie, it isn't a hit and run the way it is in the book. So in the movie, they hit a fisherman on the road, and then they stop and check on him. They think he is dead, and so they're going to toss him in the ocean, but then when they go to grab him, like, he grabs them. However, even though they know he is now alive, they still toss him in the ocean. So in some ways, it's good that they stopped, but then by stopping, I don't know, they just like committed full-on murder at that point. In the book, they actually hit a young boy who is on his bicycle, and Barry is driving, which in the movie Ray is driving, but in the book it's Barry, and he just keeps going and he doesn't stop. And they do call 911, but by then it's been over 10 minutes since they hit him, and they read in the paper that the boy had died while he was on his way to the hospital in the ambulance. And in the movie, the guy they hit is the one that comes back and harasses them, whereas in the book, the boy they hit had a brother who was deployed at the time of the death. When he comes back to the States, it's been some time, and so he is upset that he missed spending time with his little brother, and he missed the funeral. And when he comes back, he lives with his sister, and he starts dating Julie. He knew Julie was involved with killing his brother, and so like he pretends to just like run into her, but really it was planned. And then later he moves into the same building Helen is living in, and he starts a friendship with her as well. So trying to get, be sneaky and become friends with them first. And Ray comes back in town and he hears about this guy Julie has been seeing, because after the accident he had left and now he's back in town again, and he and Julie had been dating. But anyway, so he meets up with this new guy Julie's dating, and in the book Ray realizes that it's the dead boy's brother, and he is the one that just, pieces it all together and saves her in the end. In the book, Barry is shot in the stomach. However, he does live. He is just hospital bound for the rest of the book. And then Helen, who had become friends with this guy, at some point he reveals who she is, and she freaks out, and she gets away from him by jumping out the window of her second-story apartment, but she also survives. In the movie, though, Barry's hit by a car and he's in the hospital but is soon released. However, he is later killed. Helen is being chased by the fisherman at a later point in the movie, and she jumps out of the window like she does in the book. However, she too is ultimately killed. Her sister Elsa is also killed in the movie. In both the book and the movie, Elsa is shown to not be very nice. And in the book, Julie even suspects she might be involved, but nothing really, happens with her. And then some other changes with the characters, starting with Julie. In the movie, when we meet Julie before the incident, she is made out to be this straight-A student. In the book, though, she had been much more into cheerleading and various extracurricular activities, and it wasn't until after the accident she becomes very studious and becomes, that A+ student. Also in the movie, they had all graduated, but in the book, only Barry and Ray had graduated, and Helen and Julie still had another year left of school. And in the movie, before the accident, Helen was crowned a Croaker Queen, which really doesn't mean much, I guess. But she plans to go to New York and begin her acting career. However, after the accident, she instead stays living at home and works with her sister Elsa at their family store. In the book, I think it was soon after the accident, or maybe right before, she submits her photo to the local news station and wins the title Future 5-Star. And so she then drops out of school after her junior year and works for the news Channel 5 news station. And she's getting paid well, and she's on TV, and she has enough money to get this like swanky apartment. And she just kind of seems not to be bothered about what happened, and she's just has moved forward with her life and is living well. And also, Helen and Barry stayed together. He was impressed with how she was on his side after the hit and run. And then she became the future 5-star, and it would have been dumb to date the girl who's now on the news and has this nice apartment. However, he still does cheat on her. And we also see into their home lives, like Barry, as we see in the movie, comes from a rich family. And his mother doesn't approve of Helen because she comes from a poor family. And in the movie, it shows just with Helen, we just see her dad and Elsa. But in the book, her mom and dad are both around, and they have like 6 kids or something, and saying how loud it is when she goes back home because of all the kids running around. And then also in the book, Julie's mom has like this sixth sense kind of thing. And like she could just tell when something is wrong. And the night of the hit and run, she had gotten it really strong. But then Julie came home at a decent time and things appeared to be fine. So she was like, oh, I don't know, maybe it was nothing. And then Ray probably has the smallest role in the movie, but that is partly because they wanted us to suspect him. In the book, Julie, Barry, and Helen briefly mentioned that it could have been Ray who sent the note, but they never really stick with that thought and they drop it pretty quick. And then the scene with Missy, the sister. In the movie, Helen and Julie go visit Missy, the relative of the person they think they killed. And then Julie again goes a second time. And in both, the sister just seems kind of off, and you just get this like eerie, creepy feeling when they're over there. However, in the book, Julie and Ray are the ones who go. And when they visit her, the sister is just really nice and chatty. And in both, we learn that the mom is somewhere else and like in some kind of home, because the death of her son was just so hard on her. So now she's on like in a mental institution type thing or whatever. But so when they go to visit her in the book, it's not creepy at all. And like Julie just feels terrible knowing the pain that they had caused from that night. But Missy herself was just a really friendly person. And then the author, Lois Duncan, actually had like nothing to do with the movie. And she was not a fan of it and is quoted saying that the movie was a shock to me. It was very exciting to learn that there was going to be a major motion picture. I could hardly wait to see it. But then when she's actually in the theater watching it, she said, I thought, that is my book, but who is that man and what is he going to do with the ice hook? Well, I soon found out. He was going to decapitate my characters. I was so horrified. It was quite a shocker. And with her involvement in the movie, she said, they kept me as far away as possible. I think they were afraid of how I might react if I realized what my little masterpiece was going to turn into. She also went on to say, I had expected it to be my story, but it wasn't. It was my characters and my plot gimmick, but then it went in all directions. Even the double identity twist, which was the crux of the story, had been omitted. Also, I was quite horrified by the sensationalized violence. Several years earlier, my own daughter, Kate, had been chased down in her car and shot to death, and I had seen right in front of my eyes what real violence is. To have people screaming and laughing about it did not go down well with me. So even though she obviously does not like the movie, I mean, there is the plus side, though, due to the fact that thanks to her her book sales went up like crazy. And like 4 decades later, her books are still getting published. And I mean, there's been movies made of other books of hers, but this one is the most well-known, though. And so I think it's in large part thanks to this one that she's quite well off. But on to the book or movie. So this movie has pretty bad ratings online. And like, I get it. It's definitely not like high quality. I did enjoy watching it for like nostalgic reasons, I guess. But yeah, I mean, is it a top rate thriller? No. Though when I watched it when I was younger, I seem to recall being much more pulled in. And I'm pretty sure I also fell for, the red herring of Ray. And I was like, oh, it is him, The book, as I said, is targeting a younger audience. So it too isn't the best thriller I've ever read. But as I said, when I was in my teens, I loved her books. And in the end, I would still say the book was better, I guess. It's a thriller / mystery, and it isn't like the gory slasher movie the movie is. And then there's that twist at the end when we find out who the guy is that was behind it all and how it was Julie's boyfriend and Helen's friend. And so that was a nice twist. Whereas the movie doesn't really have any twists like that. Like there's the mystery trying to figure out who the guy is because they think that he died. So like, it can't be the guy who died. It must be someone else. But then we find out it is him. But yeah, I mean, neither one is like top notch. I guess if you have a teenager who enjoys thrillers, then yeah, they would enjoy the book and I would recommend it. But to my fellow adults, I would probably pass on this one. I mean, for those who have seen this movie back in the day, it is always kind of fun to revisit those and yeah, just for nostalgia. But anyway, this was a super short podcast, but I mean, the book was a quick read, so there, wasn't too much to it. But yeah, so that wraps it up on I Know What You Did Last Summer. And join me next week for a much more intriguing story and one that I have much more to say about it. And that is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. So I'm excited for that one. Not to say I didn't enjoy this one, because I did, but I just have a lot more to say about Gone Girl. So yeah, I will see you next week. Thank you. Thanks again for listening. If you want to find me on other platforms, you can check out my Facebook, so facebook.com/whythebookwins, or my Instagram, which is all one word, whythebookwins, or you can go to my website, whythebookwins.com. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can reach out to me on any of those. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account where you can show your support by donating a couple bucks to the podcast. So that's buymeacoffee.com/whythebookwins. But the fact that you are simply listening to the podcast means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe and follow and tune in next Wednesday for the latest episode of Why the Book Wins.